Good morning and welcome to our third meeting in the EIT Health Summit series. An exciting program of presentations and discussions, as well as a range of community and peer-to-peer networking opportunities. EIT Health is a network of best-in-class healthcare innovators backed by the EU. They deliver solutions to allow European citizens to live longer and healthier lives. With the final sessions taking place this week, we will continue to look at the most topical and meaningful issues on the healthcare innovation agenda. Last week, we looked at artificial intelligence and went beyond the hype and buzz to understand how we can ensure that AI solutions are ethical, data compliant, and fit for purpose. We also looked at high-value care and how we can restructure healthcare to make sure that we have measurable outcomes that have high impact and matter most to patients. If you missed these sessions, you can rewatch them on demand. Now, this Thursday, the EIT Health Catapult Final and Award Ceremony will conclude this virtual series. Today, we're turning our attention to new business models and how they can meet customer demands and help you remain competitive in an ever-changing landscape. Now, over to Jan-Philippe Beck, CEO of EIT Health. Good morning, Jan-Philippe. How are you?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Very well, thank you.
Go ahead, take it away.
Thank you so much. And good morning to all of you. Welcome from our studio here in Berlin today. Pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to kick off indeed the second week of our EIT Health Summit. The EIT Health Summit is our annual flagship event. We are connecting the worlds of business, research, education, and of course, healthcare delivery around health innovation. And as Anne-Marie already said, today we will be looking at new business models in health tech. But before we go there, just again, a very short preview. Let's look at Thursday, what's awaiting us, the EIT Health Catapult Finals. We will be hearing pitches from Europe's most exciting startups from medtech, biotech, and also digital health. Our Director of Business Creations will, that's Kurt Höller. He will be walking us through that and mastering those pitches as every year as we then go to the final award ceremony. And on Thursday, almost feels unreal. We will be moving towards the conclusion of the summit then already. And we will be joined by Maria Gabriel. Maria is the European Commissioner for Research, Innovation, Education, Culture and Youth. And she will be talking about how Europe will be promoting innovation and of course put a particular focus on the area of health and also the work with EIT Health in that domain. Now back to today, new business models in health tech, that's on the agenda. What's the playing field? Of course, we have enormous challenges in our healthcare systems, cost constraints, managing access as well as affordability. And of course, we all strive to constantly improve quality of patient care. Now, innovation is, of course, key to address those challenges. And therefore, business models need to evolve their strategic lever to make sure that they can actually, in the end, deliver the innovations and make sure that those innovations can really reach the patients and create impact. So how can innovators navigate the path towards reimbursement, but ultimately, of course, also the scaling of their solutions in a very fragmented European healthcare market? Now, we will be discussing these subjects today, and we'll be joined by Ariel Stern. She is Associate Professor at the Harvard Business School. We'll have Christina Lagersteit. She is the CEO of 1928 Diagnostics. And last but not least, Gottfried Ludewig. He's a Director General for Digitalization and Innovation at the German Federal Ministry for Health. And Kurt Höller, our Director of Business Creation, he will be leading that session, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Back to you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much, Jan-Philippe. Lovely to see you. Now, today we will connect leading players from across healthcare to present exciting new models and approaches and discuss how health can keep up with the fast pace of change. Through a series of panel discussions, case studies and presentations, we will look at the current business landscape and discuss new business models from across the EU and the US. This will be followed by a more in-depth look into the digitalization and innovation from a European perspective. Please contribute to our conversation, comment on the content and engage with your peers through our chat function. Your comments will be visible to all attendees, so please be courteous and polite to others. If you have a specific question, you can input this in the question box or simply vote for the question that you like best. At various points in today's discussion, we'll also be using multiple choice polling. We'd love to hear your opinions and views, so please contribute to these as well. Externally, share your thoughts, your experiences using the hashtag EITHSummit. Now, if you rather use your phone or a tablet to contribute to the polls or the chat, simply scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, and you can also find this on our webpage. Now, over to Kurt Hulla, EIT Health's Director of Business Creation. He's going to start by introducing a business model and a business case from a European and US perspective. Kurt is leading EIT Health's accelerator, which supports over 500 startups and connects them with leading players in the healthcare industry and has a budget of over 15 million euros. Now, Kurt, lovely to see you today. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Annemarie. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and welcome also to the audience. COVID-19 has impacted businesses around the world. And in most cases, in many cases, very negatively. But in digital medicine and digital health, we have seen a high push, and we have seen great ambitions to also address all the challenges that we experienced during COVID-19. So there have been a few smart people that already thought about digital medicine and artificial intelligence in health far before we had this impact through the pandemics. And in order to create new business models, and many of them are based on digital medicines and digital health, in order to drive new business models, you always also need the right ecosystems to get them active and to get the right drive. And just before we started this session, I had a little chat with Ariel coming from Boston and our CEO, Jan Philipp, whom I visited together with the Boston area last year, together with our whole management board. And we looked a bit deeper into that innovation ecosystem. And when we visited the dean of the Sloan School of Management at MIT, she gave us her business card, and we flipped the business card around, or when I flipped the business card around, I saw that they put 5 key stakeholders on that business card that actually define or that are important to have an innovative ecosystem. One of that is universities. I think that's clear. A second stakeholder that is important to have an innovation ecosystem is corporates and industry. A third one is entrepreneurs, spin-off from those 2 partners and categories. A third one is risk capital and investors. And a fifth one is politicians and governments who have to set the right frameworks. And today, in that session, we have representatives that cover more or less all those areas. So I'm very much looking forward to have in that session, as Jan Philipp has already pointed out, 4 people, 2 economists. So we will see Ariel Stern and Gottfried Ludewig. Both are economists, but one of them, Ariel, is still active in academia, but she also had a career in finance. And we see Gottfried, who is a politician and is very active in politics, but also has a background in the corporate world. And we will see a biochemist, Christina, who is a really amazing entrepreneur, but also has that scientific background. So the main factors for economic success are the right business models. But the right business models always have to adapt to the regional ecosystem, to the domain-specific hurdles and requirements. And these are spanning from regulatory affairs via IP and data protection to reimbursement schemes. So that's the topics that we will look into today. But to start with an outside perspective on the health business landscape in Europe, I'd like to welcome Ariel Stern on stage. Welcome. Good morning, Ariel. Thanks for sharing your outside perspective and your outside view. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be really good.
Cool. So let's get in. Christina.
Great.
Oh, sorry. We start with questions from the poll. Indeed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I actually wanted to start with the poll. I thought it would be fun for us to get our participants involved sooner than later. So with that in mind, we wanted to bring up a poll question for our participants. And the poll question is, what do you view as the greatest business model challenges facing startups in health tech? We're going to give you 4 options. Pick the one that you think is the most compelling. So the options are navigating the regulatory approval process for new products, getting reimbursement from health insurers, selling a software product in an analog environment, or finding the right customer. So that is answering the question, who will pay for this? So we're gonna, as you heard from Anna Marie a bit ago, these questions are on Slido. So you're gonna go to Slido. We'll keep the Slido poll open for a bit, and I promise we will come back to the results of this poll later in this session. What I can promise right now is that no matter how you answer this question, and please do answer honestly, we're gonna have something for you during this session because we'll be touching on all of these topics and how they impact health tech startups in particular.
Thank you. I did not even introduce you, Ariel. So to start with, Ariel is, holds a PhD in public policy from Harvard, but she also worked as an economist on Wall Street and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And currently, she is an associate professor at Harvard Business School. And in her research, but also in her teaching, she focuses on management of innovation in healthcare. But we Europeans are also lucky to get her to Berlin. You got appointed just quite recently at the Health Innovation Hub as a director of international healthcare economics. So it's it's a great starting point to look into our European landscape from a US perspective.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful. And actually, I thought I would kick off my portion of this discussion with a few definitions because we often, I think, especially in this environment, sometimes we talk about digital health, sometimes you hear the expression digital medicine, and I think it's actually useful to make a distinction between the two. So when we talk about digital health, we talk very, very broadly about all of the products and services at the intersection of software and health. But when we talk about digital medicine, we're talking about a very specific subset of those products and services. Those are the technologies that really meet 2 criteria. The first is that they're evidence-based. So digital medicine is evidence-based. That means we have evidence from clinical studies or other research to actually show that these are products that are effective. And the second criterion is that these are tools, or these are technologies that have the ability, whether they use it or not, to interface with the formal healthcare delivery system. So I'll give you a few examples. If you think about the yoga app that I used last night in my apartment, that's a digital health product because no one's done any clinical studies yet about this app as far as I know. If I have a fitness tracker and I'm using that fitness tracker to train for a marathon, that's also a digital health product in that context. However, in that moment where I start using a fitness tracker, say it's a Fitbit, in a formal clinical trial, for example, for a new diabetes drug, that can be a digital medicine product. And then if I think about something like a software-driven blood glucose monitor that a diabetic patient uses and sends that data to their physician to help them manage their diabetes, that's absolutely a digital medicine product. Because that digital blood glucose monitor is both evidence-based, it's been shown to be safe and effective in clinical trials, it's been verified and validated, and because we are using that tool in the formal management of a patient's healthcare. So I think with that in mind, what we want to do is focus, for the most part, the rest of today on digital medicine companies and products. And what I'd like to do is introduce the CEO of a digital medicine company, Dr. Christina Lagersteit. Christina is the CEO and co-founder of 1928 Diagnostics. She's a molecular biologist by training and holds a PhD in medicine and surgery from the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. Previously, she worked as a project manager at GU Ventures, which is a venture capital company, and she has extensive experience in the commercialization of academic research. So welcome, Christina. It's lovely to see you again.
Hi,
Thank you
Christina.
so much, Ariel. Hi, Kurt. It's great to be here. Fantastic opportunity. So really looking forward to kick this discussion off.
Thank you. Ariel, so what's so special about 1928 Diagnostics as a digital medicine company?
Yeah, so 1928 Diagnostics is really exciting for me. First of all, it's a science-based business that truly couldn't have existed at the turn of this century. It's as you said, it's also unambiguously a digital medicine company. 1928 Diagnostics, their technology is built on a database of scientific research, and the applications of all of their technology are exclusively in the formal healthcare delivery sector. But I'll let Christina actually tell you a bit more for now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Christina. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of 1928 Diagnostics, a company that we started with one common and very clear vision, and that is to save the power of antibiotics and save lives by outsmarting superbugs. So basically, our product is a cloud-based, fully automated DNA analytics platform that serves hospital laboratories and hospitals that will use the pathogen fingerprint to, one, profile pathogens, and two, stop outbreaks to save lives and huge costs for healthcare and society. So in 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. And since then, the lifespan of man has increased by 10 years. But already when Alexander Fleming received the Nobel Prize in Stockholm, 1945, he mentioned the risk of bacteria becoming resistant to penicillin antibiotics due to wrongly used drugs. Today, antibiotic resistance is one of the greatest threats to humanity, spreading and causing outbreaks also in hospitals. It's estimated that about 5% of hospitalized patients suffer from hospital-acquired infections. Hundreds of thousands of people die every year, and the related cost is billions of euros. So what is a superbug? Superbug have two main characteristics. One, they are resistant to treatment. And two, they are very good at spreading, also in hospitals. But there is a good solution. Proactive screening of superbugs in hospitals can actually stop outbreaks. Proactive screening of superbugs can actually predict outbreaks by observing the superbug before it starts to spread. So proactive screening can save and is saving lives already. So the best and most powerful way to use proactive screening is to digitalize the perfect genetic fingerprint of pathogens. That is by using DNA of pathogens. And this is done at hospital laboratories already today, where they use a technology called DNA sequencing technology to digitalize the DNA from pathogens. And by using software such as the 1928 platform, they will use the genetic fingerprint to profile pathogens and to trace them. And also, you can share this data between different stakeholders at the hospital, but also between hospitals. So this is not only a very usable method for microbiology labs and laboratories, also from different stakeholders at the hospitals. And we call it, therefore, impact infection control. So I'm not actually sure how much time I have left, but I thought I would introduce you a little bit to how we came up with this idea. So it was actually in 2012 when I was at an after work with my friend and collaborator, Eric Christensen, who is a professor in bioinformatics at Chalmers University of Technology. But this time I was a cancer scientist working with children with leukemia. And these children, 90% survive, but 10% die. And they don't die from cancer or leukemia. They die from infections they get at the hospital during treatment with chemo. So why is this? Because they're not the available technology for one, tracing and keeping the hospitals out of superbugs, and two, they don't get the relevant treatment in time due to the complex resistance in these pathogens. But there is a solution. Because the DNA sequencing technology is perfect both to profile pathogens and also to trace them. And guess what? Eric, in his research, he had databases, as Ariel mentioned, of genes and mutation causing antibiotic resistance and also a bunch of algorithms. So we thought that we could productify this, put it in the cloud, and enable the use of this fantastic DNA sequencing technology for hospitals worldwide that would save lives not only in children with cancer, but all patients suffering from an infection. So the users are not only the microbiology lab, but also the wards where the doctors provide treatment and understand if there's an outbreak going on. The infection control unit that will do all the work to monitor what happens at the hospital, and of course also the administration. So that was a little bit about what we do. I can continue to talk about this for another 5 minutes, but
Thank you.
I think that's
Thank
briefly.
you. Thank you, Christina, we will have more time to follow the discussion, because indeed what you have developed is really impressive, and it's great to see how digital medicine can have an impact on things that you would consider to be solved by new antibiotics, for example. So just develop new antibiotics, that's the only solution, but you demonstrated that providing digital medicine actually might have much more impact. So Ariel, you wrote a full Harvard business case on that about 1928 diagnostics, and we have seen which impact it has, but why is the business model so crucial and also challenging?
Yeah, no, this is a terrific question. And this is a real challenge for many digital medicine companies. And what it boils down to is the fact that in both Europe and in the United States, we have inherited institutions for reimbursement in healthcare that were designed with 20th century technologies in mind. And so here we are in the 21st century, and we've got all this really wonderful new technology, and we're dealing with a healthcare delivery system and a reimbursement system that simply wasn't built around the tools and exciting products we have today. And so, you know, in my research, I call this institutional mismatch, because there's this mismatch between the institutions we have and the technology we want to be adopting. And the challenge then, not just for Christina, but for really all digital medicine and digital health innovators, becomes figuring out how to capture value. So that is answering this question that actually showed up in our poll a bit earlier, which is who will pay for this technology? How will it get paid for? And how will I, as a company, be able to create not just value for patients and for healthcare providers, but value for my company as a viable business model? We're gonna hear from Gottfried Ludwig in a bit about public policy innovation to start to solve this challenge on the public policy and reimbursement side. But for now, I actually thought we would discuss business model strategy a bit with Christina. So Christina, I'm gonna ask you a bit to share with us about 1928 Diagnostics. How is your company thinking about its business model, and what are the current possibilities, and how has your team been thinking about its approach?
Well, so this has been a journey since we started the company in 2014, and I think the most important is to focus on the customer, and here the customer can be multi-stakeholder, which we didn't think of actually in the beginning as much when we started to develop our platform. So you must think, who is the user? But it's not always that the user is the same as the payer. And when it comes to 1928, we have sorted out different models for payment and also business models. And we're iterating it and still doing. So to start with, we thought that it was supposed to be a good model to use fee for service or pay per analysis, so that microbiology lab would actually pay for each genome of a bacteria that they uploaded to our service. But that, we understood quite quickly, didn't create the value that we wanted, because they need to have to analyze a lot of bacteria to really get the value from looking at outbreaks and so on. So it's more of a volume than per analysis. So what we've been working on since then, when we only had one bacteria, we started to focus on MRSA or MRSA, which is the most common bacteria causing hospital-acquired infection, actually about 60% of the hospital-acquired infections. But really soon we understood that the power of this technology is not to do a diagnostics at first, because what the hospitals use this technology for was to trace the bacteria and create trees of inheritance to see how closely related bacteria was to one another, so that they could, as I said, not only stop an outbreak, but also predict outbreaks by profiling the bacteria. And to create that in the most efficient way is by using a lot of samples. So now we will always focus, and still doing, on the operational budget, that is the clinical microbiology labs, but it can also be a central core facility lab that does DNA sequencing, not only for microbiology samples, but also for cancer diagnostics and for rare disease. So by bringing more samples into these facilities, they will also lower the price for the sequencing, because here we have both a cost for the analysis as we provide, but also a cost for the DNA sequencing. But the value to be caught from the hospital side is not only at the microbiology lab to do a more efficient workflow and do same for all pathogens, but also for the wards, specifically when there are immunocompromised patients, like pediatric oncology, like the neonatal unit, and like in transplantation units. So the wards will benefit, the infection control, the unit will benefit from a much more efficient workflow, and of course the administration, to keep the hospital safe and free as possible from superbugs like bacteria.
Thank you, Christina. So you have already pivoted several times to find the right model and to adapt your model also from one specific target to maybe also different targets in the future. So if you look to the current business model that you have worked out, do you think that in 2025 you still work with the same business model, or how will it look like by then?
I think this is the part of it is depending on different markets and the readiness of these models in the market. And then what we thought that we would deliver it's a software as a service, right? So this is a tech company as much as a digital medicine company. So what we want to introduce is business models from tech and enter into the healthcare space. As of now, it's still too early to do it on a broad basis, but by 2025, I really think that would be the case. But given that, we will not only stick to one model. This is the way that we want the users at the microbiology labs to adapt to our technology. But on the other side, there is a greater value for hospitals. So that's more from the capital budget to sell this platform. As it increases, the more features, the more different superbugs and pathogens that are included, and the more features the users can add value for different stakeholders. That is a different thing. So we think that we will have, and we cannot imagine either all the business models that we will try until 2025. But we're still sticking to a subscription model, but it will be different, and also depending on the demands of the different customers. So it can be for 1 year or 3 years. And also, since we have a lot of competence in our team, we will also provide services as a package for certain customers, such as an IDN, for instance, or a hospital chain.
Thank you, Christina. One interesting question that I would have, and if audience also wants to ask question, please just drop a question in the chat in the questions area. But one question that would really be interesting for me to be answered is, how did investors react on your various business models that you have developed so far? So did they get more and more interesting, or did they also give pushback at some point of time? And also looking into the 2020 year of pandemics, was it more difficult to interact with investors, or was your solution something that is totally crisis independent, or even pushed by the pandemics and the crisis? So how did it go so far? I have read in Ariel's business case that you have already successfully raised 5 million euro, but how did it develop overall so far?
Yeah, to start with the investors, so we have actually fantastic investors. We currently don't have VCs, but family offices from Sweden and the Gothenburg area where we're from, and also investors from the US, UK, and so on. So what is really crucial here is, as I said before, we're a tech company as well as a digital medicine company. And the investors need to understand this. It's very new, and the model and everything must be iterated, and it will take some time. So we really need patient investors. So we've had going for the past years, we have raised money about 3 times so far, about 9 million euros as a whole. And that is to be patient. And some of the investors that have processed want us to IPO within a year or 18 months from where they invest, and that's never been the opportunity for us, at least not before we have business models that works and a really stable revenue stream. And when it comes to the pandemic, so we've had actually a lot of increased interest from investors, which is fantastic. But to be honest, it's difficult to have time with that right now. I mean, one of the good things about the pandemic, which is of course not good, but in a sense, yes, because actually people are now aware of the difference between a virus and a bacteria, and that virus cannot be treated by antibiotics. Which is good because awareness is always good. So our customers, especially on the microbiology side, some of them are really, really busy, but there is very clear that this pandemic in some ways has leapfrogged into a more digital mode, and the understanding that it's difficult to take care of the services and efforts that we are providing by themselves, especially when things happen. So I think it's more important than ever to understand the power of testing, proactive testing, and thinking long-term when it comes to threats like antibiotic resistance.
Thank you. How difficult is it for you to get prepared for different markets? So your business models that you develop, you already touched on that different markets might be interesting. Do you have totally different business models for each market, or can you adapt them, or is one business model the same for the whole global market?
No, I mean, you need to really figure out and do stakeholder mapping at hospitals, at your important markets, which we do. We understand quite much about the Swedish and Nordic markets, and we work with UK, work with Germany, and also North America. But what we do is that we create close relationships so that we can work tightly with our customers and users. Otherwise, it's impossible for us to make a product that will really benefit them and create value. So it's by working and also creating examples, because an example from one market can actually be used by another to understand from what budget are we taking this? Okay, is it the microbiology lab that pays in this country, or is it the overall laboratory budget? Whereas somewhere else, it can come from the capital budget. But I think creating examples is always key.
Thank you. I hope Ariel's students are not all listening to that talk, but if you could, not her students, because they still have to work on that case study in her class, but
right.
everyone else, which recommendations would you give to entrepreneurs, to young entrepreneurs that are just right now thinking about potential business models? So what would you tell to them?
I think it's very important to iterate and be open and talk to many people, but in a focused way, of course. And it all depends on what kind of system that you are providing or what you're thinking of course. But always try to be as close to your customers as possible and test things. It's very important.
Testing business models certainly is important.
I'll just add something quick to that. I end up chatting with a number of health tech entrepreneurs, and something that I always encourage folks to do, and perhaps this sets us up nicely for the next part of the conversation, is to understand the regulatory and reimbursement environment. I can't tell you how often, some really smart young people, and sometimes not so young people, come to me and say, hey, we've got this really cool idea for a digital medicine company or for a digital health app. We'd like to tell you about it. And I say, great. Is this going to be regulated? Is it a regulated medical device? Have you thought about how you're going to get it reimbursed? And there's sort of this moment of silence. And I think that it's never too soon to start understanding the regulatory and payment environment for healthcare startups. And so I think for me, my advice is in addition to what Christina said, sort of really understand the institutions, because that's going to be so important in being able to craft a viable business strategy moving forward.
Thank you, Ariel. That's the right word and the right introduction for the next part of the session. So thanks a lot, Ariel, Christina. Thank you so much for joining. And we will see you later in a few minutes in the panel discussion. Thank you. The best business models will only succeed if the legal frameworks allow to do so. And the German healthcare system is strong, but it was not always considered to be on the forefront of digital health and digital medicine. But then Jens Spahn got Minister of Health in the German government, and he put it very high and on top of his agenda. And he created a directorate focusing on innovation through digitalization and through digital health and digital medicine. And it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Gottfried Ludwig here on stage, who is the Director General of that directorate that was created by Jens Spahn. Welcome on stage, Gottfried.
Thank you so much, Kurt.
Gottfried, you actually have prepared yourself very well for that position through your PhD on the regulatory framework of the German health insurance sector. So going from a scientific and academic perspective to what you're doing now is perfect. But you also acted as a parliamentarian yourself at the Berlin House of Representatives, and also in that position, you have been there for 8 years. You also focused on innovation in health. So that's good to have an expert in that position. We know each other for more than 10 years personally, but right after your appointment to that new position, and it's nice to see that picture that reminds everyone on how you started.
How young we were, actually.
How young we were 2 years ago, exactly. So you just left the Berlin House of Representatives, right. And in May 2018, you explained to Jan Philipp and me which ambitions you have, which plans you have, what you think should be changed in the German healthcare system. And we heard a lot of keywords and discussed a lot of keywords. And in the meantime, all those keywords are somehow in the news, so we see them happening. So what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, actually. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. And I think it feels like, I know it's now about 2.5 years, I think, we are on this ride together with our Minister Jens Spahn, who actually decided, obviously, when he took office, that digitalization will be his #1 key priority. Before actually him taking the leadership and him also taking the office, there was actually not any kind of department concerning digitalization in the Federal Ministry of Health. So what am I most proud of? I think there is not one single healthcare act or one single initiative. It's more that at the beginning we said to everyone, we won't talk only. We won't only write a strategy paper. We won't only have theoretical debates. We will make a concrete difference, and we will change things. And this is our project, and this is our ambition for the 2.5, 3 years which lay ahead of us. And I think this is something we probably, and I think the whole team and the Federal Ministry of Health, we are a little bit of proud that we fulfilled this mission, at least to a certain extent. I mean, there's always things to make better and to do better, but I think that we really made it happen.
Thank you. Yeah. It can be confirmed that you made a lot of things happen that no one anticipated and no one thought about before. I was following you on several social media channels, and I took that Instagram post that you posted last year. And it shows the Digital Care Act. In German, it's Digitale Versorgungsgesetz. And you also discussed that with our German director, Katharina Ladewig, at the European Health Congress. That Digitale Versorgungsgesetz includes also the DiGA fast track that is unique in the world. And could you enlighten us a bit more on the concrete aim and also the potential that is included in that act?
It still is about the electronic medical record. It's about e-prescription. It's about the question of the research data center and a lot of things. But one thing actually, obviously, which was probably something new to the world a little bit, was the DiGA, so or software as a medical device or app on prescription, however you want to name it. And I think the simple idea behind that was that, you know, I looked at the market and I met so many wonderful entrepreneurs, and they showed us not only interesting products, but they also showed us evidence that those products really have a positive effect on the outcome of healthcare. So on the outcome of on my individual well-being, on being healthy or being sick or having a better treatment or having a not so good treatment. And from my point of view, the simple question to a regulator is, if this exists, and our idea of statutory health insurance company is that we want to reimburse, you know, the best treatment possible, and there is a treatment which is possible, which is better than probably the treatment we have today, so isn't it our job to then open the framework and to offer this kind of treatment to everyone being insured by the statutory health insurance companies? Because this is basically our job. This is what we have to fulfill. And there was a huge debate. Maybe I just add this. There were people, oh, you're only doing, they were telling us, you're only doing this to support startups. Or you just put money in there. And I think this is so not true, because actually it's also, there's a social dimension. Do we want to have people participating on the digital transformation, and do we want to offer this to everyone, or do we only want to offer apps and apps to the people who can afford it in the App Store, you know? And this actually, so talking probably a little bit long, but this was the easy idea to open the framework to devices or to software which helps us to create a better outcome of our healthcare system and to offer this to everyone in the statutory health insurance companies. And this is the basic idea, and I'm obviously very happy with everyone that it's now not only in the Act, but also the guidelines are published and the first apps are certified, and we will now see in reality what will happen.
It looks like there was some resistance. Do you want to elaborate on that? How did you convince those that were skeptical in the beginning?
I think in the end, actually, it's about leadership. And it's about the leadership of our minister. You know, this should not be a commercial break for Minister Jens Spahn, but being in politics now, being in industry and politics actually now for more than 10 years, I always see the difference is there someone who really wants to take over or who wants to take the leadership and who wants to move forward, or not. And you know, obviously there are critics. I mean, there are critics, and obviously they probably some are right. I mean, this is, you know, I don't want to know what critics or what we have done looking at pharmaceuticals, for example, how this process was elaborated for years and years and years. And the easy question was, do we want to stay in the theoretical world and debate, or do we want to make a difference? And do we, and is the risk we take, can we argue why we take this risk? And is the risk not too high, but not too small? And this is actually what the debate was about. And I'm happy to be part of a team where the majority says, we have to take a step into reality. We have to take a step, also taking some risks, to then see what happens and then to regulate again. Because we always talk about agile ways of working. You know, there's no politician who doesn't tell in a Sunday speech to industry and startups, oh, you're so agile, you're so wonderful, you're doing this really a great job. And then we're coming to the regulator and everyone is working like in 1870 when Bismarck was in his office, you know. But there is a difference. We're in the year 2020, and I think also the regulator, we did this Digital Healthcare Act, and I think the software as a medical device, the DiGA, is obviously one of the probably most famous steps we took. However, I know it will be probably one of the projects which will be changed in the upcoming month and years over and over and over and again. And this is, but you know, this is okay because it's a new way, but we're in reality and we make a difference in the reality. And I think this is also a kind of concept the regulators should get used to it.
Thank you. So you pointed out that this act was not only created for startups, but certainly it offers new opportunities for new business models that would have been totally impossible before. So therefore, everyone also within EIT Health is very happy about that act, and I can tell you that there is a huge interest of startups from all over Europe to now enter the German market, which before was always interesting but considered extremely difficult, and now that certainly has changed. Talking about the Digital Care Act a bit further, there is a famous paragraph, the paragraph 263A. That allows statutory health insurance companies to also invest into digital health startups. And we have a financial instrument created together with the European Investment Fund that leverages co-investments from strategic investors together with private investors, private VCs, through an additional investment from EIF. And EIF is more or less setting the gold standard of co-investments and selecting private VCs. We always had in mind our corporate VCs like Siemens, Philips, GE, Roche VCs as a strategic investor. But there is an institution, the Health Innovation Hub, that you also helped to create, that's basically got in touch with us and told us, hey, the VCOE that you have created is actually a perfect opportunity for the German statutory health insurances to co-invest with private investors, because they are not experienced, but through that co-investment under the umbrella of the European Investment Fund, that could work out very well. So actually I have two questions connected to that. The first question is, I experienced throughout the last year a great collaboration and a great, not only support, but also great engagement from Henrik and Julia and many others and the Health Innovation Hub team. So how did you have the idea to set up that hub, and how important is it actually to have such a think tank, such an organization to really drive innovation?
So first of all, I'm again very impressed where you all find those photos, actually. But a second, no, Julia, Henrik, Jörg, obviously as the chairman, and Ariel also now as new part of the team. I mean, they're all doing an incredibly important job, and they support us in a very unique way. Again, this was at the beginning of the so it was, I think, April or May 2018, and again, we had a kind of roadmap what we want to achieve, and we had ideas where we want to be at the end of the 3 years. We had not always a clue already how to get there, but we knew where we want to go, right? And one thing was we have a wonderful team at the Federal Ministry of Health. And at the same time, we see that the transformation process of digitalization is a huge challenge to such a complex system, state-regulated system like the healthcare system is. And the idea was to create not always to, I mean, having worked in the consultants area before, I should be careful what I'm talking about, but not only spend money on consultants, who have also their own business model, but to create a kind of group like a professional think tank, just being close enough to the Federal Ministry of Health and at the same time, far away enough from the Federal Ministry of Health to create some kind of bridge between the regulator and the innovators, and to be kind of a melting pot where the ideas and also the constraints of a regulator can meet and can be discussed in a more open and free environment than the ministry is, right? Everything we do is quite formal. And this was the idea. And then I talked to Jörg, who was back then the chief medical officer of GE and who came back, and we talked about, he was still in the US. And then we convinced him, and I told him in 3 months we will have set it up. I think it took in the end something like 8 months, but we made it happen again. And there they are, and they have a very crucial and important role to answer your question. And I think it's a very good kind of challenging each other, right? It's a challenge between our team at the ministry and the Health Innovation Hub. We challenge each other. But we have the common goal to transform the federal ministry, not the federal ministry, but to transform the healthcare system to a new digital approach. Second question about the 263. I mean, this is another, that was actually my point when you asked me about the software, the DIGA at the beginning. I was just answering with a lot of different things, because I think we only change the healthcare system if we try to get a step forward in so many different areas, and all those little steps forward in the different segments of the areas, then they connect. And they create this kind of movement to a digital world, because you open the framework to innovation in so many different areas that you really create energy and a kind of new spirit in the system. And the 263 is something I never believed would have gone through Parliament and to the cabinet. We talked about, is it okay that the statutory health insurance company is allowed to invest in a venture capital fund? I already imagined the headlines and everything else. And however, we were like, okay, but it's right, because the incentive of investors in the healthcare system, we should add something to that, because a statutory health insurance company hopefully does think more about how can I create a better treatment for my insured person than and to have a better outcome on the long run than just thinking about actually the business model of one single company I invest to, right? So, and this was the basic idea, and I think we move forward, and I think the EIF, right, is it called?
Yeah.
So this is a fantastic opportunity also for them, and actually we haven't thought about that before, but now also thanks to Henrik, I think especially, and the whole team, and there were a lot of talks. This could be a unique opportunity to move forward and to show to Germany that this could work. Because from the venture capital side, it's so important that this is the showcase. This is really the showcase to prove that it's possible to invest from the social security systems into the venture world. And this is the business case for the pension systems, for so many things. And there is a lack of venture capital in Europe and in Germany especially. And this is a disadvantage in the international competitive world. And so we hope that we not only have set up the showcase, but with the help also of you and this project, we can then show that it's working, and then we convince even other social security systems to invest into venture capital.
Thank you. So really a great and important step, and let's see how that develops. And I think it's also interesting to see if German health insurance companies use that opportunity only with the German development bank, or if they take the European approach involving also the European Investment Fund and investing into European companies to bring them into the German markets. Staying on the European level, I'd like to focus on the pan-European crowdfunding platform that we have kicked off. And you might remember those nice pictures when you also attended attended that celebration, and it was an important milestone for EIT Health, because first time ever, we made it possible that a citizen or a medical doctor from staying with Christina, let's say from Madrid, can invest into her Swedish company. That was never possible before. And we think it is important not only to attract money from investors from other countries, but also to interact with potential users, with doctors, with patients from those regions. So how important is it to you, and how important do you think it is to validate business models right away on a European level and not only on a national or regional level? So how important is it to think European right from the start, or even international?
Well, I think it's crucial actually, because the market. I mean, if we compare it, especially to the US and to China, just also the German market. I mean, I think you know, maybe we are too big to fail, but we are too small to shine, right? I mean, it's just we are not big enough as a market to really be, or to be the country or the market to lead to an international success. So it's a good start, but I think it's even better to think everything European. And this is also something I'm always thinking about. How can we, and we try that now also with the EU presidency, and the platform is a wonderful example. How can we foster also every movement to a kind of really also European market? I mean, we have this discussion with pharmaceuticals that probably for the last 40 or 50 years, and I don't see that we really, that this is, I understand that this is a very challenging framework. But regarding like the digital world and the question of digital health or digital medicine, maybe this is a good starting point, because everyone starts from zero, right? To combine the framework also on a European level. And I mean, I think this is very important to have, like, the stability of the framework and the common framework in Europe. Then we have the question of the technological interoperability, especially also the semantic interoperability of data, because data is crucial to everything, but it's only really really an advantage if it is standardized and in a very and you can then combine it and analyze it. So we have to work on that. But those two aspects we try to foster with our European presidency at the moment, and we're also talking to all our other European countries, because there is a chance that Europe really can move forward. And if we don't do it actually in the next upcoming 1, 2, 3 years, then we will become the continent who pays the bill, but who has no innovators here. So this is really a crucial point where we have to decide in Germany, but especially also in Europe, if we want to be a part of the people who trigger the innovation, or if we just want to become the market who receives products from innovative countries like China or the US.
Thank you, Gottfried. Indeed, the German presidency is of the Council of the European Union is an important milestone. There were huge expectations already before the crisis. Now, during the crisis, of course, priorities have shifted, but I think expectations to have impact on especially the European health data space are pretty high. And it's really interesting to see that we have a GDPR framework that is implemented all over Europe that did not touch so far the area of medical data. Actually, it would have been a great opportunity, but I think people have been afraid, and also parliamentarians have been afraid that the GDPR would not have been brought into action at all if we would have integrated that. But nevertheless, we have a GDPR that is pan-European. Internet doesn't know any borders, doesn't stop at any border, but both reimbursement, but also collaboration of healthcare providers and the exchange of data still stops at the regional borders. So if you could take some steps ahead there, that would be extremely appreciated. We might come back to that in the panel discussion. And I'm pretty sure that there will be plenty of questions in the audience, but before we can start asking questions to Gottfried, I'd like to also bring the other two panelists back to stage. Ariel and Christina, would be great to have you back on stage so that we also can answer questions to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now it's time to also have a look on the poll that Ariel has launched at the beginning of this session. And I'm really looking forward to get your feedback. So what's the biggest hurdles and hindrances that we have right now to enter and start new business models? Can we have the results on the screen? Here they are. First one, the most important one, is navigating regulatory approval processes for new products. And second is getting reimbursement from health insurances. What a surprise. So Gottfried, do you think that you can now offer a solution? And do you think that other countries in Europe also should implement similar acts as you have implemented in Germany to address that challenge? Do you think there is a solution for those guys?
Well, there certainly is, however, it will be, the answer will be complicated in reality. Everyone is like, yeah, I want to have reimbursement, and then if you have the reimbursement scheme there, everyone is coming to you and saying, oh, this is really complex, and this kind of evidence we can't really deliver. But actually, yes, I think it's worthwhile, as I mentioned before, that we, I think, not only on a national level, but on a European level, how can we elaborate on a reimbursement scheme for digital products in healthcare, also on a European level? This is, I think, a very unique opportunity to move forward, and also to bring transparency actually to this market. Because I mean, we saw the wonderful presentation from Christina in 1928, right? But I also know a lot of companies who have really innovative products. And I see others where actually, at least from my point of view, I see more marketing than evidence based products being designed. And so I think it's a huge opportunity for Europe. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Gottfried. The second or the third point, actually, so we touched the first 2 points. The third point, finding the right customer who will pay, that certainly is also still important. So it's a quarter of people also address that, 24%. Christina, so what would you tell to the 24% that provide the feedback that this is a challenge, and what would you say to the other 76%? Didn't they just realize that at the end someone would have to pay for their products? Shouldn't that also be part of their business model?
I think all these aspects are very relevant, to be honest, and the regulatory and also to following different standards is something that is very obviously very important for us as well. But in this digital reality that we are entering or are already in at the moment, and which is also leapfrogging due to the pandemic, I think that the customers and the different stakeholders, from their side, they view different factors that will impact what they buy and not. And that can be apart from the regulatory landscape, like a CE mark or an IVD mark, or when coming to the US, from an FDA approval. Also GDPR compliance, and following data security regulation and standards. So I think it's a moving landscape. And coming back to that, it's really important to monitor the different markets. And the European market, I really love the way you talked about how to foster into collaboration within Europe. Gottfried, that is so important, and also to make European companies stay European and give us the opportunity to really stay here. And I think that here it's really important to also, in an easy way, understand the differences. Although we have, when it comes to GDPR, for instance, I think that's really good. But it's difficult for us, for small companies, to approach new markets if the regulatory systems are really, or not the regulatory, but if the requirements from the buyers are very different. So we need more of a harmonization here.
Thank you, Christina. So that goes very much in line with what we have heard before. So Ariel, selling a software product in an analog environment doesn't seem to be the biggest challenge at the moment, but that might change in the future as we see more and more new business models in that area of digital medicine. So how pressing will that challenge and that question be in the future from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we probably would have gotten 0% on this question if we'd asked it 20 years ago. So, you know, I think it's going to be an upward trend. No, in all seriousness, I think as we see, you know, the growth of companies like Christina's, companies like 1928 Diagnostics, these are companies that have huge potential to transform the quality of healthcare in hospitals, but they're selling cloud software to hospitals, and hospitals are not used to being in the business of doing cloud software procurement and negotiating those contracts. Hospitals are used to the types of contracts that are, you know, I want to spend this many euro, and this is how many hospital beds I want, or this is how many hip replacement devices I expect to get. And there's this very one-for-one, fee-for-service mentality around procurement, in particular within healthcare institutions. We're used to, you know, give one diagnostic test. I think many of us in recent months have taken a COVID test. Hopefully most of them have been negative. But, you know, you take a sample, you put it onto, you know, if it's a quick test onto a quick test, you get a result 15 minutes later. And so it's this, you know, buy one, get one mentality. And that's completely different when we're thinking about selling something like cloud software, something like the types of technologies that can be used again and again, either for multiple patients or for one patient over and over again. I think understanding how do we actually price and how do we actually sell software in healthcare is going to be a huge challenge. And I think we'll get to think through this together over the coming years. But my bet is it will be a growing issue.
So we will see you more often in this type of panel discussions to explain that question. Thank you. I think now it's time to open up in the remaining 15 minutes to the audience. Annemarie, are there any questions from the audience?
Absolutely. We do have some coming in. And the first one is actually about the GDPR. You mentioned this for a little bit already in the discussion. And the question is, a lot of digitization of healthcare can be hindered by GDPR. As we know, the regulations surrounding privacy for issues. Are there plans to make changes or for the evolution of GDPR? And I think this is a question for Gottfried, mainly, to start with.
A very challenging
question.
Yes, I
thought so too. Right. No, it's one of our priorities, not to change the GDPR, but to give a certain more certainty about how the rules of GDPR really have to be applied in the healthcare sector. And this is meant by the code of conduct. And I'm really looking forward. Tomorrow is the EBSCO meeting, and obviously we will also design the question of the scope of the code of conduct. And the Commission already promised that by the end of 2021 we then will have first results on the question of the code of conduct. Because the main challenge also for companies is that we have a European law environment, but then it's like, you know, it's different if you come to Italy or to Germany or to France or to Sweden or to different nationality, and the national authority interprets the way the GDPR should be applied in a different way. And I think this is the most crucial and hindering challenge of the GDPR at the moment. So we are working on it, and we are working especially on it that it will be really a European framework, and this is a reliable framework, and I think this will help a lot.
Right. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Ariel or Christina, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just add from the international perspective, I think transparency and uniformity are going to be extraordinarily important for getting non-European companies excited about investing in Europe and developing technologies in Europe and selling technologies in Europe, and therefore helping to benefit healthcare in Europe. I was just on the phone yesterday with a US healthcare technology company, and their strategy for the moment until they raise their next round of venture capital is to completely avoid Europe, because they don't yet have, I know, and everyone's rolling their eyes, poor Gottfried has heard this before, but they're not yet in a position, they can't yet hire the really expert corporate lawyer who can help them understand what the implications of GDPR would be for this company to actually operate and actually maintain a database in Europe. And so their strategy right now is just focus on the United States, get groundwork there and raise more capital, and then move on to Europe in the future. I think for Europe, this is a disadvantage for everyone. This is a disadvantage for US startups who are interested in going to Europe. This is a disadvantage for European patients who now won't be able to benefit from this technology until these companies decide to enter the market. So I think that anything that can be done from a policy perspective to create a uniform and transparent environment, of course, without compromising the safety and security and privacy of patient data, is going to be a huge benefit for companies from all over the world, as well as for patients and healthcare providers in Europe.
Well, it's very clear, and a clear call as well to keep paying attention to this subject.
Keep paying attention.
There's another question coming in, more focused about the users of, for instance, health applications. What do you think is the biggest challenge that digital health applications still have to overcome to become an important and widely accepted part of the German healthcare system? Who would like to take this one?
I have a sneaking suspicion that the gentleman to the right of me would be the right to answer that.
I don't know. I think it's also interesting to hear the other perspectives. But just I think one point I would love to add is the role of the doctor, actually, so of the physician, because this is too often underestimated by startups, at least I'm meeting. Because obviously, if you have a product, and also if you are certified, and also if you're accepted for reimbursement, for example, in the German business model, right? There probably still has to be a doctor or a physician who will prescribe your app, and you have to have doctors who are convinced by your technology. And I think one of the major mistakes, or which I'm confronted with, is that the thinking of a company is just, oh, this is a good product and the patient will love it. But if the doctor tells the patient that this is a bad product, probably the love is very fast over. So, and this is something I think this kind of collaboration, it's a complex world we are living in, and or we are facing in the healthcare sector. But you have to. I think the idea now, I'm in the system and I will overthrow everything which has been there, in most of the cases won't lead to success.
Thank you. The question was targeting on the German landscape, but Ariel, maybe you can add a perspective.
Yeah, no, I think we can even think about this more broadly than just digital health applications. I mean, I think what Christina was talking about earlier is a terrific example, thinking about this multi-stakeholder approach in hospitals. And Christina, I'll let you talk about that. But I think asking these questions about who is the user and who actually has to be on board with this new digital product. And, you know, remember that most of the people in our healthcare delivery system today did their medical training before there was broadband internet. So, you know, think about, many people went to medical school. They didn't have email during medical school. People who were practicing physicians today didn't have email when they were doing their medical training. So now we have to think about, how do we get those people involved? And Christina, I know you've thought about this a lot in the hospital setting. Maybe you can share with us some more about that.
I think it's spot on. It's very important, and also to have to really focus on usability on the end user, and to talk about them very, very early when you develop, and also look at how did they, if they did, how did they do this before we digitalize the world, right? So that they can feel confident and have trust in these new technologies, which can really benefit them and make work a lot easier. But I think it's key, and a lot of companies are maybe a little bit sometimes too late in delivering a very user-friendly digital product. And also when it comes to different stakeholders, they require different different processes, and also that we have done a lot of usability and to validate the products, not only from the scientific side, but also to understand how they use it, so we can verify that.
So there's still a lot to win in that area. Moving on to the next question, and we're focusing a little bit more about the current pandemic. So how did the investor community during this crisis position themselves? Is there a positive environment at the moment for companies in healthcare AI, digital health, or digital medicine? Could you say something about that? Maybe Christina?
Christina.
Yeah, from our side, I get a lot of interest. So I think it's pretty good, actually, right now. Although the stock market, especially in the beginning of the year, a lot of things happen, as we all know. But I think a lot of venture capitalists are really understanding that going into telemedicine and digital medicine, digital health is a long-term but very important way. And that I think the focus on impact investments and long-term that have a social impact is also something that is growing. Hopefully it is.
Maybe I can even add to that from an EIT Health perspective. So in the beginning, there really was a drop of investments. So investors really kept the money for their own portfolio in startups, but they didn't want to invest into new startups. That's also why we have initiated the rescue instrument. So that was an instrument where we co-invested more or less. So we provided the grant of 500,000 euro to companies that were in the middle of their funding rounds and just couldn't close them due to the pandemics. And we have seen a high interest. So there were still a lot of co-investors willing to co-invest, but usually the lead investors dropped out. And then during that process, so we launched that in April. And during that process, the selection, the evaluation, the due diligence, then the signatures, we had 2 out of the 11 companies that we were supporting that dropped out for a very positive reason, actually. They told us that through that rescue instrument, but also through the change in the overall situation, they got a lot of visibility and they found investors that now were willing to invest into them. So you really could see that in the beginning there was a huge drop, and then during the summer it got much better, and I think now it's a pretty positive attitude towards at least digital health and healthcare startups, totally different than other businesses.
I can actually add to that, maybe to clarify for you. So I say that we have I've seen also in companies and people that we know that it's exactly that case, that from the summer and on, it's been really, really much better. We actually finalized our latest investment round by this time last year. So by December, which was excellent timing. So we have been focusing on doing what we should do to work with the customers to sell and develop product and so on. So we were lucky in that sense. But still, I think long-term kind of companies, digital health companies, digital medicine companies is really for the future.
Well, that's great to hear. If you want to add something, Gottfried?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think we are really on the move, right? You really see the dynamic in the market. You see the dynamic in the national markets. That's very positive from the venture side, from the patient side, from the doctor side. And on the other hand, and I just want to emphasize what Christina has, I think, said at the beginning, it's like if you're trying to find an investor, find someone with patience. Because we're still in the healthcare sector, right? It will take time for the upcoming years. So we are in a very dynamic situation, but it will take time. That's just one thing I can only recommend to everyone out there.
All right, and we're going to stay on the financial theme for a little bit, because one of the questions that just came in is the operational part of being reimbursed by insurers already figured out? Does the patient get codes from his insurer, or is there some sort of centralized approach? Can anyone say anything about that? How to get reimbursed?
So it's solved for the moment. What we are still working on a better process to be implemented, actually. So it's now you actually indeed get a code in the cooperation between the doctor and your health insurer, and then you can download the app. But there will be also a more automatic system being implemented, I think, within the next year. So this is the current status.
And I think this is I mean, Germany is well ahead of other countries in that there's at least a centralized registry of products that are reimbursable, and that there's a guarantee upfront that those products will be reimbursed by statutory health insurers. I think other countries are still figuring this out, and there's quite a bit of heterogeneity. I know in the United States, some products are reimbursed, some are not. Some are reimbursed by certain insurers and not by other insurers, and there's this very patchwork system that I think actually makes it quite difficult for digital medicine companies and digital health companies to think about where do I fit into this landscape. Something that's been quite exciting, actually related to the last question about the pandemic, is that the US Medicare system, which is the largest health insurers, the public health insurer in the United States, has said that it's going to be very generous in reimbursing for remote patient monitoring. And this is really exciting. This is related to telemedicine and many of the devices and tools and apps associated with telemedicine. So that's a great start. But actually, the big piece that's missing is that Medicare hasn't yet figured out how to link that reimbursement to evidence. And so now what just in that one little area, what the US has done is actually overcorrected and gone too far in the direction of saying we'll reimburse for everything, even the things where we haven't yet proven the value of these tools. And I think that's actually a mistake. And so I think systems like the German system that have a built-in mechanism for demanding evidence generation on an ongoing basis to actually show that these tools continue to be safe and continue to be effective is going to be really important. But I think in general, to answer your question, we have so much heterogeneity right now that that the more we can do to clarify, the more welcoming the environment will be for startups and innovators to actually build the tools we want.
And just a little thing, it's really an international exchange on ideas, right? Because I remember our exchange with the colleagues from the FDA about their pre-cert program, learning from them and their experience to then actually move on to our Healthcare Act. So I think this is also a wonderful point of, or part of this, also of the pandemic, but also of the digital world, that we really try to have also a closer collaboration between the regulators worldwide.
Just a quick final follow-up question to that last one, focusing on insurers. In your experience, are health insurance easy people to work with? Everyone laughs. Who wants to take this one?
I mean, they're doing their job. It's their business, actually. We are doing ours and they're doing theirs. To be very honest, there were, from the statutory health insurance companies, there were a lot of support when we presented our first idea of this new, actually very transforming idea of opening the market to digital products. So to be very, very honest, they gave us a huge support to that. On the other hand, they're doing their job, so they will look at your product and will also have their figures ready. So it depends on how you define easy, right?
I think that's a nice way to conclude this round of questions as well. But back to you, Kurt.
Exactly. Thank you, Annemarie, for picking out great questions. And thanks to the panel for such a lively and interactive discussion and great insights and answers. So I think we have seen, a lot of examples on the one hand, how we can create new business models in that area. We have seen how politics also is able to set the right framework, and where we still see needs and tasks, especially on a European level. So let's hope that some impact there will come out of the German presidency that is currently running. And we also have seen the roles of investors in those new business models, because there is always someone who has to finance upfront the new development and then make sure that this can be turned into a product that provides impact and innovation to the systems. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gottfried. Thank you, Ariel. Thanks, Christina, for joining, and hope to see you soon at a different panel or at the same panel next year. Let's see. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
I don't know how you feel about that session, Annemarie, but I'm always excited about seeing such great and passionate entrepreneurs with new business models. And Christina from Sweden really has done a great job in showing and taking us into and on her journey. But I also found very, very exciting and very impressive how, actually I have to admit, two very good and old friends of mine, Ariel and Gottfried, help shaping those ecosystems, those innovation areas, and especially digital health and digital medicine is a very promising one. So for me, it was great to chair and moderate that session. I hope for everyone in the audience, it also was a nice experience to get those insights. But with that, I would like to hand over to you, Annemarie.
Yes, it absolutely was. And also judging by the questions that we saw coming in. And thank you for doing such a wonderful job moderating the session for us.
Thank you.
Now, and of course, thank you to everyone watching to contributing to this conversation that we had. What really resonated for me was the need to reshape incentives with new business models to make sure that we support the development and growth of new digital health technologies. Now, you also shared some things online, so let's take a look at a couple of tweets that we picked out for you that you shared using the hashtag EITH Summit. And of course, you can just take a look online to see what was shared there. Now, after a short networking break, the rest of today's session will be dedicated to a selection of EIT Health's projects that are using new business models to do things differently. You have a choice of 5 different projects to take a look at, and they are ArtIQ, Health Integrator, Ochre Bio, Smart for Diagnostics, and Turbine AI. Now, these sessions are an opportunity to showcase specific projects in more detail, and of course, there's also room for your questions. The bite-sized presentations will be repeated 3 times in succession to make sure that you don't have to miss out on any of them. Simply select the projects that are most relevant to you. Round 1 will start at 1:30, round 2 at 2 o'clock, and our last round, round 3, at 2:30. I would say enjoy your lunch, have fun meeting our innovators, and have a lovely rest of your afternoon. Goodbye.